Oh, this is awkward. Okay. All right, are we going? All right. So this is chapter 9 and 10 from the online teaching survival guide. Am I doing evens or odds? I forgot. So chapter 9 is called Phase 4, Pruning, Reflecting, and Wrapping Up. So things that you do at the end of your online course. So basically, it's methods to increase student skill confidence. So when kids are finished with your course, you want to make sure that they can take what they've learned with them. So how to help them in the future, how they can know that they've learned all the content, how to organize it all together in their heads, and also doing sort of big things at the end, like projects or presentations, to make sure that they understand what they were doing. Tip number 1. So using what if scenarios. So this is like what if something happened in the future. So we had acid rain, or what if history happened differently. So if someone assassinated Hitler, and then letting kids kind of walk through that themselves. So it's like a problem solving experience. So it makes them have to research, the conditions and use higher level thinking to put it together to make something happen. And then there's no right or wrong answer. So it's nice you can get a bunch of different answers. And basically you can get that charted by finding a case study that's already out there and just fiddling with it already. And so it's like a what if scenario instead of this is what's actually happening scenario.
It's kind of interesting. I feel like the Common Core standards, it all revolves around this specific tip.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking the SBAC right now, and most of the questions it's finish the essay, finish the story. So I thought, I was making connections as my kids are going through this.
That's cool.
Did anybody take farmers class? The one where I think it was where we had to think of scenarios with ethical and non-ethical possibilities. So that's what this part reminded me of. This helped us delve more into all the different policy issues in that area in terms of using technology and ethical issues and non-ethical issues. That's something that reminded me.
Okay, so tip 2. So
okay, so tip 2, stage 3 of a learning community. So it's moving from effective communication to active collaboration. So basically it's tying everything together and having a closing discussion. So talking about the big issues, putting problems together, just pretty much closing everything that we've learned and relate concepts to students' interests and experiences. So hindrance, online personalities, mismatch of learning styles or course expectations, personal or technology issues. So basically it's just creating that learning community by making connections with each other.
Cool. So tip 3, learners as leaders. So this is kind of letting kids take over the end of the class instead of having the teacher do it. Benefits of this is it helps kids feel empowered and they're the person who knows the information and they're the resource. So they feel a little bit more like they have independence and they're the strong person in the class. Ways to make it go well. Make sure kids have plenty of time so they can feel that confidence. Make sure that they can get feedback before they have to turn in whatever their final product is. And make sure that there's small teams. So kids are kind of more responsible for what's happening. It's not just a couple of kids in the group getting it done. And make sure kids understand what's happening. Explain how this final element relates to the content. Make sure they know what their accomplishment is supposed to be when they're finished. Okay, tip 4, concept mapping.
So it helps students integrate new knowledge with prior knowledge. So basically it's connecting what you already know to the information that's being given to them. So how to use this, make sure to give students a focused question, teach to the connections and expertise, and it's good for review or for discussion.
Okay, tip 5, case studies. So this is exactly the same as tip 1. But instead of a what if, it's grounded in a real world context. So it helps students understand how their content relates to the real world. It uses stories to help structure content around, because, you know, we do better with stories than just straight facts. And ways you can use it, you don't just have to use it at the end of a unit. You can use it to launch a new subject. So kids can put what they're going to learn in context. What does the real world look like? It's a way to give kids deeper reading. So you have a case study and you give them readings, and then they have to use the readings to help them figure out the case study. Or it lets them have like creative writing time, because this is kind of imaginary scenario. So kids have to like flesh it out and use their own like explanations and their own logic, and have to explain everything and put it all together. So creative writing.
And that kind of goes with tip number 6, pausing, reflecting, and pruning. So it's just holding, kind of like showing the students or helping them decide the most important concepts, because of course, you know, we want them to remember everything, but it's just basically pinpointing the most important concepts for long term. So the strategies that they gave is have students generate questions, let students define the core concepts for the course, and have students reflect on what they actually learned. So basically it's giving them the opportunity to reflect on what was being taught, what's important to them. And it's interesting just because, you know, in my class, I try to give this freedom in the reflection, like anything that, you know, they're learning about, they take their own notes, the color coordinator, everything based on the importance. So it's just having them reflect, because, you know, when we reflect on it, we tend to understand what we're learning a little bit more.
Okay, tip 7, closing experience. So when you're ready to wrap up a class, like make sure that there's a list of things that are coming ahead, so kids don't get so overwhelmed with all the things that happen at the end of the course. So like assignment deadlines, reading deadlines, when's the final, blah, blah, blah. And plan some time to do a end of course celebration. So not necessarily like a party, but sort of a way to wrap up loose ends, review key concepts. And just like in most classes, you probably had some time in the first day to introduce everybody and kind of go around, like kind of close the class the same way. And it's also a good time to ask for feedback, like what projects worked, what projects didn't work, things like that. Okay, tip 8.
So tip 8 kind of goes along the same, that requires internet connection, video, audio capability. So basically just the requirements that they need in order to close everything. Using live space, gathering space for content discussions, collaboration space for student teamwork or instruction students. Invite experts, just basically getting together and just saying goodbye face to face, instead of just, all right, the class is over and that's it. It's basically giving everybody closure in the class.
Okay. Tip 9, debriefing techniques. So if you want to get feedback or things like that, make sure you have one place to collect the feedback. You're not, you know, got a paper one and an online one and a da 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 da. And good questions to ask for getting feedback is especially what was best, or like what project do you think kids next term would really benefit from? What did you wish there was more on? Like, was there a topic that was like too weak in how it was handled? What would you change? And what's one piece of advice now that you've finished this class that you would give someone coming into the class? Ta-da! Yay! Okay, chapter 10, teaching accelerated or intensive courses. Tip number
so
one.
chapter 10, tip number 1 is using content framing and case studies. So content framing means to use a visual map of the course to help students see connections and refer back to prior knowledge, content, and environment. So basically giving them an overview of what they're expecting so that they can start making connections from the very beginning. And as they go through the class, they can continue making those connections. And case studies have students learn by doing, need to learn content to solve. So it's basically giving them the opportunity to, all hands on deck, just creating that project in order to see that they're understanding the content, tie all the content together in a culminating project. So just kind of like how we discussed, just give them a variety of projects so that they can choose from, giving them the opportunity to choose what project will tie all the content and everything that they learned together.
Okay, tip 2, high impact practices. Basically, it's know that in this kind of accelerated environment, there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to cover all of the necessary steps of learning. So students kind of have to take care of themselves and make sure that they're filling in the gaps to actually help themselves process the content. So that means instead of going through every single step, like you sort of need to make sure that students know their own steps, so they're identifying patterns. So like help them create connections between the data themselves, chunk information more effectively, because kids are missing out. And so you need to kind of bridge those gaps for them yourself.
Tip number 3 is developing expertise. So you're just giving them time to practice what they're learning. It's hard to get when it's so accelerated, just because, there's a lot of content that they have to go through, but it's just giving them the opportunity to catch up with what we're learning and tying everything together. Use case studies and scenarios to build expertise. If they are able to tie and understand what they're learning with like a scenario, it's easier to understand the concept. So basically, if you give them a scenario, they're going to be able to manipulate the information a little bit more. Expert resources, give historical, social, practical context, and TED Talks is another resource that they gave.
All right, so that's it for chapters 9 and 10. I think we have some review questions, though.
Can you show the slide?
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Where do you want me to go?
Number 4?
Wait.
I'm sorry, tip number 1, slide 4.
Here we go.
I'm sorry, this is the part that I was making the connection to in terms of scenarios that we've had. So in one of the classes that we had for ETEC, there was a lot of technical information, including like policies. So in any class, if there is a lot of information, or especially more technical or academic, it really helps to have these what-if scenarios, to have more of a hands-on application to allow people to synthesize information. I was wondering if any of you had, if you're teaching, opportunities to use this technique in any classes. They're not online.
I haven't, so I'm going to be silent.
Or if you have students in your program right now, I'll say Long Beach, have you had a chance to use any of these, and were they effective?
I mean, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to use those ones, especially since I don't have my own classroom right now. But I know sometimes when I get towards the end of like I've introduced how to like do some basic coding and programming with them, I start asking them like, well, what would happen if you changed these variables that you're putting in there? What do you think would happen? And then let them kind of test and see if their theory is correct.
Do you think it helps them engage in more deeper thinking?
Yeah, because then some of them, they'll start going like, oh, wait, I don't have to just do steps A, B, C. I can start getting creative. And then they'll start going, ooh, look what I made now. Look what I made it do that are all things that they weren't asked to do. So then it helps them get a little more independence and a little more ownership of their learning.
That makes sense.
I think it develops a lot of critical thinking as well.
Yeah.
Like just giving them that opportunity, like you said, that independence of, you know, kind of owning up to their learning.
Yeah, it helps like some of those higher order thinking skills so that they're not just going, oh, okay, I learned A, B, C. Then they start going, oh, it's not just I'm memorizing facts. It's, oh, I can apply this to something and see how it works and develop that deeper understanding.
Makes sense.
And I haven't used these scenarios that much. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I think it's kind of pertain to maybe more certain subjects, more relevance, like for history or science, because I taught math for 8 years. So it's this kind of scenario kind of, I don't really see it fit into math, kind of. But I do agree it does, you know, promote like higher thinking level skills.
Well, it's interesting because right now with the SBAC, they have a performance task, and I basically see that this is a performance task, giving them the what if scenario. So they'll give the students like, what if you went to the circus and you bought this, this, and this, and it gives them like a whole bunch of different things and just like analyzing what they bought. And it gives them kind of like there's multiple correct answers in the performance task, just because there's multiple ways that you can find an answer. So I could kind of tie it together with that just because I'm seeing it happening right now while they're taking the Smarter Balance assessment. So that's kind of the connection I can make with that.
Yeah, it'll ask them some of those questions that are like, oh, if you have like this much of an item, how many products could you make? And you could choose, oh, I could make 5 plates, or I could make 2 plates and 3 bowls, or 2 bowls and it lets the kids solve it multiple ways and come up with whatever they kind of want their answer to be in a way that fits within the guidelines of what they're looking for.
That makes sense. Let's move on to another tip. Lynn, did you have one in particular?
Yes, let's go to tip, I think, wait, 3?
What slide is that?
I think it's 6. Slide 6. Oh yeah, learners as leaders. So so the author stated that we should design online programs that promotes learners as leaders. I just wondering, why do you think we should design experiences that empowers learners as leaders?
Well, one of the things, one of my teachers, when I first started teaching, she was like my BITSA mentor my second year, and she taught 5th grade. And every single year, starting about halfway through the year, she would start training her students to run the classroom. So she would teach them how to do, like, how to teach a lesson and how to organize an activity. And she would slowly give them more and more freedom as they got further in the year, until the students were pretty much running the entire class, and she would just kind of monitor what they did. Each student got a turn to present a lesson and teach the rest of the class that lesson. She gave them like time to like learn it beforehand and so that they could help each other. And it was cool because the students really felt like, oh, like I can be the expert on something. I can help others figure out how to do something. And it gave them a lot of confidence and independence and ownership over what they did inside the room.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's, you know, I haven't had that many years inside the classroom, but it's super interesting to see the things that they come up with and the connections that they make.
Yeah.
So, you know, this year, especially with this group, I gave them a lot more freedom, and the things that they created, the projects they created, the assignments they turned in, which is amazing. And it was just them running it, them coming up with everything, and me just being there, you know, to guide them in the right direction. But, you know, it's, you know, I mean, they're 5th graders, but they need these skills in the real world. Like, they need to take charge of their own learning. They need to understand that they have all of this potential and really believe in themselves. Like, I've seen a lot of my lowest students grow so much because they have that confidence. Like, I feel in education, that confidence just guides them so much. So I think, you know, developing learners as leaders is extremely important in the classroom.
Yeah, because I think when they're at a younger level too, they just go, oh, okay, I just need to memorize all of these things and perform well on my test, and that's it, I'm done. But then, like, if we teach them, like, no, you really actually have, like, a choice in your learning, and you're the one who can, if you want this, like, you can make it happen, but you have to take that responsibility, and training them in that way helps them, I think, to become, like, stronger learners and to perform better in the classroom and other areas of their life as well.
I think whether they're young, like young second graders or third graders or older, if you have them in groups in charge of presenting something to the class, it really just makes them more responsible to, hey, I really got to make sure I do this. And it helps them develop those communication skills when they do present. So they really deepen their own learning of the content. So I think those are great experiences.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, and I think it gives them a sense of empowerment. You know, it encourages them to see themselves as like a valuable resource to the class and gives them a really good experience.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you don't feel like you're contributing, then why would you want to put forth effort? Like, well, then it doesn't really matter if I'm here or not. Whereas if you're given that responsibility, it's like, oh, like, I'm needed here. I need to step it up. And, like, it really helps them, I think.
You become like an active learner. They're not just passive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other comments? Okay. What about, is it Vanessa? Are you gonna have questions with any of the slides? Did you prepare any questions?
No, I'm doing the
okay.
evaluation.
All right. Okay. So Aurora.
Tip number 5 on slide 8. That's a case study, which is like Elizabeth said, it's kind of like the what if scenarios. But it does allow for more real, sort of like real life events, I guess. So I was just going to ask if anyone had any, as a student in Cal State Long Beach taking online courses or hybrid courses, if you've had any powerful experiences with case studies, and have they helped you deepen your knowledge? Presented to you?
Yeah, when I think of case studies, I think of Rika. Right? Like, we had to do 2 case studies, and it's just interesting because not that it helped me deepen my thinking, but, you know, it's the test that we have to take, and you're looking at everything, you're analyzing a student, they're giving you like all of these things, and you just really have to make the connection from what you already know. So that's how I see a case study. It's like, you know, you're given this prompt, you're given this scenario, and let me show you what I know in order to really show you that I understand.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of, like, with case studies in the classroom is, like, word problems for math. I don't know if I've ever really seen case studies, like.
I think case studies are something you do with, like, not that there aren't ones that you could do with younger kids, but I've seen it work a lot better with older kids. We haven't done it so much in my physics class, but the biology class does a lot of, like, their whole first semester biology. We were moving to a new building, and they had to, like, go and test all the different things. And, like, the case study was like, you're the builder. What are you going to do about it? What are you thinking about it? And then they had this big story of, like, trying to figure out if the place was actually safe or not. And she had, like, fake things, and I don't know, it was very complicated, but she had it all set up that they were actual, like, building inspectors, like, trying to inspect the building, like, from a biology point of view, which was really cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. Do you guys think that there's any of these tips in here that like you wouldn't actually want to use in your own classroom? Or does everyone like think like you would like definitely use all of these?
I think like looking through it as I was doing the outline, I was like, yeah, like I was trying to analyze my classroom and make those connections. So I can see a little bit of each tip being implemented, even though it's not like an online classroom, but yeah, it does really help. You do the end of the year projects, you do the pausing, the reflecting, you do the prior knowledge. So you do a little bit of everything, I in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you just gotta make sure you do some of them like intentionally and also like pace them so that you are helping them make those connections. So like one of them was like celebrate at the end or make connections at the end, but I'm thinking, why not in the middle? Why not, ask students, is this working? What's been working so far? What has not?
Yeah, like start making those connections like the whole way.
Before.
Yeah.
Let's move to tip number 9, which was slide 12, debriefing techniques. Can you bring it up, Elizabeth?
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Number 9.
It's up. It's just if I'm not the one talking, it's not going to be the window that's up on the screen.
You can click on Elizabeth's and it'll default to show.
So this is the one I was thinking of. It said, create a place for feedback, survey. So it was more like at the end of the course. And that's what this slide made me think of. Well, sometimes you need them beforehand just to kind of gauge for the instructor, like, how is this class going? What's maybe working so far? Maybe what I need to actually like change or do more of to help kids learn or students learn. Yeah. So a lot of these debriefing.
Yeah, I think the only professor that I've ever had do a mid-evaluation was Adams this semester. He did that mid-evaluation and between, and some of the questions were very similar.
And then how they do the survey at the end of the class? I'm wondering how many professors actually use it. To me, it does seem like, from what I've noticed and what Rezai himself has said, he does take that information into account and helps, improve the course. So if the professors or teachers don't use it, then it's not going to be helpful to the kids learning, right? Or the students learning.
I mean, and I've even seen it done a little bit in elementary when I've seen like sometimes like the 5th graders will write like an advice letter for like the 4th graders coming in next year, or but then I don't usually see it like taken to the next thing of like, hey, like as a teacher, like, is there something I could have helped you differently? And I don't know if that's just people don't think that maybe like the younger kids know like what they want, or if they're just, but I don't know. I think it could be applied to every level.
Or they just don't have practice doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking in terms of what you were saying, like with little kids, even just like at the end of a unit, right? You could debrief, hey, what did you learn? What did you
like, what was your favorite activity from this unit? Like, which one did you not like at all? Why didn't you like it?
Even if you just do it verbally, I think it helps get that feedback that you need, or it gives opportunity to kids who maybe usually don't speak up. Like if you just make it a lesson, like let's debrief, what did you like, so they could hear other kids and then reflect on their own learning.
Yeah, it's interesting because last year, I kind of did a end of the year survey just because I wanted to see, just give me your ideas, give me what you thought of, specific lessons. Did you like them? Did you not like them? And, some of the students or most of the students said, oh, too many science videos, like too many of them for one content. So it's like, oh, okay. Like, thanks, like I thought they were fun, but maybe for you guys it's too much. So this year, we reduced it. So it is interesting getting their feedback. Like I love when they speak up and you know, sometimes I have one assignment and they end up doing 3 different parts, you know, personal parts that go along with it, but just because they want to. So that's also interesting because it's like, oh, well, I can also give them the option, like just verbally tell them or write it or make it part of the assignment, just so that, you know, they have that opportunity. But it's just like little things like that that help change what goes on in the classroom. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I gave a survey, SBAC survey, like where they feel more comfortable teaching, either in the morning, in the afternoon. That was helpful. And then little tips, like some of them took it serious, like, you know, concentration music. I would like this, I would like that. Most of them, we did a PowerPoint on, I forgot what, but one of the little stories said that chewing gum allowed them to concentrate more. So guess what everybody said? Well, it's a chew gum. That was like 32 responses right there. So it helps for a certain extent, but I do think it's really important because, you know, you're coming in from one perspective, but they're the ones actually experiencing and doing everything. And it's not, and really, it's not that they're going to say, oh, everything was so hard, I don't want to do everything, too much work. Like they really do give you, you know, specific feedback. The way that they told me too many videos was, you know, in a nicer way, but, you know, basically you analyze it like, oh, okay, this is what they're trying to say. Let me modify it for next year. And it does help. Like the grades, the student performance for my lower students, it increased. So it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, like that worked. So it's little things that you have to grasp from the debriefing.
And I think it is helpful doing that midway check, because even if, like, whether you're doing it online or in person, every group of students you have is going to be a little bit different. And they're going to learn in a different way or have different preferences. Like in elementary school, my cousin's teacher, every single time they had a test, would put a piece of like mint gum on everybody's desk so they could chew mint gum while they worked, because mint helps you think and gum helps you think. But then it's like some students like would choose like not to do that because it didn't help them, because everyone's different. So it's like knowing, like, you know what, this group loves videos, or this group would rather like just see it written up and work that way because of whatever their preferences are.
Just as a teacher, you're constantly day by day reflecting and trying to say, what can I have done better? What could I do better next time? So all this feedback from the students just helps guide your practice, right?
Yeah. And I can't imagine
I just want to ask them. Go ahead.
I was just going to say online, like when you don't get to talk to the students every day, like you're not, how do you know how they're doing unless you do some of these like debriefing techniques?
So I just did a student teaching lesson with this 8th grade class last week. And in the end, I asked them for 2 reflection questions. One is just very simple, just what are 2 things that you learned about, you know, from this lesson that you didn't know before. And the second one I did was I asked them, you know, for their opinion, like, what recommendation would you make to make this lesson better? And I know that, so my supervisor who observed me, she really liked that. We were discussing it. It's like sometimes as teachers, you know, we can look back our lessons and thinking, okay, what can we do better? But sometimes we don't ask, you know, the students' perspective from their end, like what they would like to see differently. So I thought that was, you know, I started doing that more this year, just like asking the students to see, you know, what kind of recommendation they will give to improve my lesson, my teaching.
Lynn, do you have a question for another slide?
Yeah, let's do slide number 10. That's tip, I think, number 7. Yeah, I thought this is kind of fun. So the closing weeks usually for like either an online course or just a regular school year can be pretty stressful. Like, you know, there's finals, there's assignments due. So I was just wondering, so if you have to design an online course, like, how would you design a closing experience that's meaningful for the class?
I mean, one thing, like when I did my second year of FITSA, it was all online. And at the end of the year, we had to choose, we could choose any tool that we wanted, but we had to make some kind of video summarizing like what we had learned over the course of the year, which was kind of fun because it just was pretty short. It was like 1 to 2 minutes. But it was interesting seeing everyone try like their different tools and just kind of wrap up their learning experiences for the year and be a little creative in what they did. So it was a little bit like a celebration of learning.
Were there like a hangout like this or something?
Yeah, like some people use like Animoto, some people use Powtoon, and just like kind of had fun with it, put in different music and got creative with it.
Right now in my my research class, we all had to write up a study, do a research study, conduct a research study. So that's how the class ended, where we just each presented what they call a poster of our research. And so it was just, that was a great way to wrap up, because all semester we were, developing our projects. Everyone had different ideas. So then we just had this final the last 2 classes was just closed with that, each person presenting, and everybody had a different way of approaching their topic. Everyone had a different topic. You learned from everyone. So I think those end of class like presentations, whether online or in person, are great ways to share what you've learned.
Yeah, that's kind of fun because it's kind of like doing a miniature research conference, just like within the class.
Any other comments? I think I'm done with the questions. Aurora, you have more? Or
I just think the book had some activities like bring your own drink or something like that. And
yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. I had never thought about those things, of doing something online in that way, but that might work. One more tip that I reviewed was tip number 2, chapter 10, tip number 2, slide 15. And that was high impact practices. And this is for like online intensive courses. Like Elizabeth had said earlier, you can't cover everything. So how do students get the most out of what they need to learn for that course? And I was wondering, I've never done this, but I know that in Cal State Long Beach, they have like winter sessions that are like intense. Has anyone ever taken any of those? I've always been curious of whether they actually work. Do you feel like you've gotten something out of it in such a short time? Has anybody taken a course like that? Was it a good experience?
It was more of like the content that was being presented was not as interesting. So I was kind of glad that I took it over the winter just so we could get it done and over with.
Right.
But
got anything out of it?
I mean,
I think it was also like some of the concepts were like challenging for me, so then it was hard, like I think, to have that disconnect too, because then like the professor was able to like make videos and explain what it was, but then like you also can't fully anticipate like what things your students are going to get stuck on. But I think one thing I learned from that is like when I do get stuck on things, just like ask, because I just kind of, I think, took it for granted that I just had, well, there's whatever resources here, and if I can't figure it out, I'm stuck.
mm-hmm.
I guess in those instances, it helps to, like the last bullet says, chunk the information more effectively. So just in terms of like maybe sharing that responsibility among the group, right? To share it with each other through a presentation, through notes. I think that's the part, that collaborative part, that's important for these.
Yeah, but I can see that, like those workhorses, I can see them filtering out and just focusing on the most important, because there's just so much out there. I'm pretty sure even if you take the semester, like certain professors would love to extend a semester, but filtering out the most important information I think it's really important to do that in those winter courses or summer courses just because of the short amount of time. So it is, I guess that's the most effective part of it, is that you know that whatever's being presented is the main points of the course.
Makes sense. Any more, Lynn? Do you have any more questions?
No, that's it from me.
Me too. Do you guys have any connections, any questions, anything that came up when you were reviewing the presentation for yourself? I personally was just thinking about this book. It's like, I need to review this whole book. And I want to prepare well for the test. So I do appreciate everybody's group work that I'm going to review. Any closing thoughts, anyone? There were some good tips, right, in these 2 chapters?
I think that's all of them.
Yeah.
I think we had some pretty good connections and questions overall. So I think that was a good review.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody. Thank you for all your work. Thank you, Elizabeth.
No, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Lots of good questions and examples, you guys.
Bye, you guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.